What's going on, everybody? We got Tommy Ashley here, covers the Tar Heels for Inside Carolina in the 24/7 Sports Network. Tommy, what's going on?
Man, it's a pleasure to be here. I wish I was sitting, and I know that's a image behind you, but that's a beautiful practice field there, and I'm sure the weather's nice and warm down in Miami. It's going to be a fun weekend down there, I think.
It generally is. So, yeah, I'm not right in front of the practice facility there. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I'm very curious. I think both fan bases are very interested in this game. It feels, Miami's first ACC game. They're 2-2, lost the last two games. Carolina 4-1, 1-0 there. But it feels like a pivotal Coastal game. It feels like already early on just because of where these teams are projected to be. Tommy, I want to get into, we're going to talk about Drake May. Everyone's excited, that watches. I'm sure Tar Heel fans certainly. We'll get into him. I want to start off this thing with the defense, because we hear so much about what's going on in North Carolina's defense. It best performance last week against Virginia Tech in that win. Can you just talk about what you're kind of seeing with this defense? And obviously they're hoping they're turning the corner, but what do you kind of make of this defense so far here?
Yeah, I think it's not a talent issue. And, it might offend some Miami fans, but I was talking to a couple ACC officials a while back, and they had watched Carolina. They had seen Carolina up close, and they said, it reminds me of Miami. And I said, what do you mean? They said, they've got all the talent in the world, but they're not able to put it together consistently. And my mind went, A, well, I thought Miami's been pretty good over the years. They have some ups and downs, but B, they're right. It's not talent. And it's always difficult when you have a new coaching change, right? Gene Chizik's come in and it's different. Jay Bateman was here last year, and there were issues, obviously, and maybe the scheme was too complicated. Maybe there wasn't buy-in. Chizik's come in. He's tried and true, maybe a little outdated, but for me, it's buy-in, Chris. It's all about being invested fully in what you're doing as a player. And I think that's what we've seen this year for Carolina is, from out of the gate with Florida A&M, they are not completely sold or bought into what Gene Chizik's trying to do. That's picked up a little bit. And then the Appalachian State fourth quarter, I mean, come on. 40 points in a quarter, 300 and some odd yards. I was there in person. I saw it. It was unbelievable. But that's kind of skewed everybody's mindset about what this defense is about. On the flip side of that, Virginia Tech's not good. Virginia Tech's offense is not good, no question about it. But Carolina was able to do exactly what they were expected to do and what they needed to do. So I think maybe a corner's been turned. I think Miami and Duke will tell us a lot more in these next 2 weeks. Definitely not a talent issue. I mean, I listened to the Miami coaches. I listened to some of the Miami players this week. They realize that Carolina is very, very talented. It's just a matter of doing it on the field, doing your job and not anybody else's. Virginia Tech and confidence is a great thing. So we'll see what happens on Saturday.
And I think from a Miami standpoint, I think Miami, the players, coaches, it's a new staff, but, Miami's lost the last three in this series. They're only 8-7 against North Carolina at home. So certainly they should have everyone's attention when North Carolina comes to town when they're about to play this game. With the weaknesses of the defense, what are you seeing that's essentially, I know you touched on that App State game, but, Notre Dame as well, the yards racked up and the points as well. What's kind of the weakness when they're not playing well defensively? Where are they getting exposed in your mind?
The defensive line is where it all starts for North Carolina. We thought in the preseason all summer that this would be a unit that was the best unit on the team, offense included, and they just haven't done it. I think it starts with pad level. It starts with technique. It starts with being bought in. And so once you can't do anything at the front, then you expose everybody else. I think the linebackers have played well. Ced Gray, Power Echols have been pretty good, but they've been exposed as well in pass coverage. And then the back end. And this is where I think the big difference is in the coaching staffs, the coaching change. Jay Bateman was all about press coverage. He was going to press at the line of scrimmage, not allow you to have any kind of free release, and then go from there. Gene Chizik is a more off-the-ball defender or schemer, and I think that's hurt this team, and the safeties have been bad. Jacarius Conley went out or got hurt last year and hadn't played yet, and he won't play against Miami. Cam Kelly's been decent. Geo Biggers has been decent. And DeAndre Boykins is probably the best one back there. But they just can't get consistent work from the front. The talent is there. Reva Hasek is a junior college transfer. I think he's in his third year now at Carolina. He's probably the most disruptive up there. Travis Shaw is a true freshman that is just a monster, number 4. If number 4 is out there, some offensive lineman's going to have a bad day or a long day. But consistency has been a thing. They haven't defended the run well. They don't get much pressure on the quarterback. And when that happens, any college quarterback can have success. We've seen it. I mean, up until Virginia Tech, and this is a stat we talked about last week for North Carolina, every quarterback that North Carolina had faced, Florida A&M, App, Georgia State, and Notre Dame, Drew Pine for Notre Dame, had put up Heisman-like numbers in those games. And that's something that's got to change. I think blitzing has been an issue. They don't blitz a lot. When they do, they don't get home. So I think it starts up front. I know that's a long-winded answer. If they can figure that aspect out, I think this defense could be really good because they do have the athletes to make some plays and make some game-changing plays back there.
Well, Tommy, don't worry about being long-winded. You're bringing great insight, and that's what people are here for. And I'm curious too, because watching from afar and then kind of hearing some things. You touched on one of the things that Miami players, coaches had said this week. One of the things that stood out to me, Tyler Van Dyke mentioned Noah Taylor as a guy that stood out to him. Can you talk about what he's bringing to the team there?
He's bringing leadership, number one. He's a guy that was at Virginia forever. He came over, I think, a couple games ago, I think Notre Dame game, he and Tony Grimes sort of got into it on the sidelines a little bit. Tony Grimes had a bad play, and Tony Grimes is 5-star cornerback, came in early, was fantastic in the Orange Bowl against Texas A&M when he should have still been playing high school ball. But Grimes hadn't been playing well at the time, and he had a bad penalty late hit against Notre Dame. The game was decided anyway, but it was Carolina losing composure. And Noah Taylor came and got in his face, and Grimes did not like that. This team needs to be player-led, and Noah Taylor has done everything he can. I think he's earned it. It's difficult to be the new guy, right? Whether it's a new coach or a guy, especially from Virginia, because Carolina and Virginia do not get along. And he comes in and it tries to take that leadership role, and I think it's been rocky a little bit. But one thing he does is he brings some consistency. He's made some plays. He's done his job more often than not. I was going to look up his stats. He's only got 18 total tackles, but he's got 4.5 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks, leads the team. So he's doing his job on the field, and he's stepping up, being a leader in that room. And it's good to see. Transfers, obviously, they've got Corey Gaynor on the offensive line from Miami. Same thing. These guys come in, they're experienced. Carolina's got talent. They are still a little young. That's not really an excuse anymore. But guys like Taylor can only help you. And I believe this wholeheartedly, you can't lead unless you can play, right? If I was out there, I could lead. I could tell them what to do, but they're not listening. Noah Taylor's done both, and I think it's been very, very helpful for Gene Chizik's defense.
Yeah, it's like that with every sport. You got to be able to play to lead. There's no doubt about that. And so it's very interesting. There was some things you were saying, Tommy. Yeah, the Corey Gaynor asked Tyler Van Dyke this week if he's talked to him, just kind of asked right at the end of the press conference there, because, the center quarterback, they've not talked, since he left. But it'll be interesting to see how he does. One of the things too, defensively, we're talking about North Carolina's defense struggle and all those kind of things. They're second to last in yards per play given up per play in the ACC, and Miami's last. So they certainly have some things to do defensively too. With that being said, they were exposed in the passing game last game in the loss to Middle Tennessee. Let's talk about Drake May. He's coming in 19 touchdowns, tied for the national lead. To put that in perspective, Miami has 4 passing touchdowns on the season so far. So the numbers all stand out. It's impressive when you watch them. What's to you, in your mind, Tommy, what's the most impressive thing that Drake's been able to do so far this year?
Wow. That's a long list. Going into the preseason, if you looked at all the ACC lists and things like that, I think Drake May or the Carolina quarterback situation was 9th in the ACC. And if my memory serves, Tyler Van Dyke may have been first. And a lot of that was based on Sam Howell's gone, Drake May is a freshman, or Jacoby Criswell, whoever they were going to pick. The bottom line is Drake May is just different. I've been around a lot of athletes in my lifetime, as have you. the ones that are elite are different. And Drake is a guy that nothing phases him. He's obviously not afraid to take a hit. He dives too much. Mac's been on him for weeks on that, and now has even recruited his parents to get him to stop making these Superman dives during games. But he's just so proficient. Phil Longo got knocked a lot, especially during Sam Howell's draft breakdown or combines and all that, of how the Phil Longo offense was a one-read offense, and then it's one read and take off. Last year Sam Howell had 900,000 yards rushing or whatever. Drake Mays proved that the offense is elite itself in scheme, and Mays' ability to see the field. He's 6'5", 225, 230 plus. He's tough as hell. He sees everything from a perspective of a guy that's been there before, even though he hadn't. And accuracy, toughness, gets the ball out of his hands in a hurry, knows where to go with it. This is something if Sam Howell didn't have Josh Downs last year, Carolina was in trouble, right? Josh Downs is still elite and still one of those guys that is great. But if you look at Carolina's receiving, Drake May will throw it to whichever Carolina blue jersey is open. And it doesn't matter what the number is on there. And I think that's made it really difficult for defenses. You mentioned 4 touchdown passes for Miami. Drake's averaging that a game. And then you take the aspect of being able to move with his legs. I mean, how demoralizing is it for a defense? You got an offense in 3rd and 9. You've got everybody covered up. You've got all the flats covered up. You've covered them deep, and May runs for 11 yards. He's done it all year. Simply amazing. I've done this for a long time, Chris, and we've seen freshmen that come in and do it. But this guy's special, and he's different. And as long as he stays healthy, he's going to play and make a lot of money for a long time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I definitely want to talk about this youth thing. But yeah, like you mentioned, eight guys, Tommy, 8 guys with at least 100 yards receiving already. This year, you're talking about spread. The numbers are spread out, even though they have Downs. And I know he's hurt for a little bit, but that's impressive. Just kind of watching from afar again with Drake there. He throws it like he's playing Madden or 7-on-7. It just looks very easy to him. And there's something that always stands out to me about young guys making plays early on in careers. And it stood out to me. Don Mattingly, I was covering a Marlins game, and it always stood out to me. We're talking about baseball, obviously, but he was saying, these guys that are really good, it doesn't take them long to get it. They just kind of they get up there, they do well immediately, essentially, a lot of these really good players, regardless of sport. And that's what stands out to me with Drake. He got his opportunity and he's running with it. And you touched on what the expectations were. I don't think there's any question he's been the best quarterback in the ACC so far this year. And certainly a lot of the season still to go. But, can you take us back to his recruitment and obviously what you remember about him as a recruit, a highly regarded guy, but just kind of the expectations for him when it was going to be his time possibly at UNC, but again, top 10 quarterback in that 2021 class, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. But what do you kind of remember about him coming out?
Well, he's been good for a long time in high school. And obviously he comes from a family. I mean, older brother, national champion at Florida in baseball, older brother, Carolina basketball national champion. And now his other older brother has just walked on Carolina's basketball team, and his father played and was one of the best ever to do it at Carolina. So he's been surrounded by that his entire life. So he had expectations heaped from day one in high school ball, and it never seemed to faze him. Of course, when it's time to be recruited, everybody says, well, LeMay's going to Carolina without question. There's no other option. But he committed to Alabama. And you look at that, and a lot of people are going to say, well, he committed and then he decommitted after Alabama got another pretty good quarterback in that class. But he ends up at North Carolina. Max said that he told May when he committed to Alabama, that's fine, I'm not going to stop recruiting you. And finally it worked out. He came to Carolina, and this is always a perfect situation, I think. He came to Carolina with somebody ahead of him that he was not going to start over. And there was no doubt about that. It would have been some catastrophic events for Drake May to start last year. And I think that benefited him to be able to watch Sam Howell do it from up close, but to be able to sit, get accustomed to college, get accustomed to everything that comes with that, to learn the offense. And all summer, all spring and all summer, we heard that it was a really close competition and weren't going to name a starter until the last possible moment. Look, I really doubt that it was as close as they say. But May has come in and taken charge. And not only can he play, and this is what I referenced earlier about leadership, he can play, but he's a leader. And those guys know who the boss is. Now, Sam Howell was great. He was absolutely great, but Sam wasn't going to be in your face and talking. And I think Drake's been that way, whether it's high school ball, whether it was 7-on-7, whether it was the camps he was in as a youth. And then he's been that way since he got to Carolina. Almost a charmed life. It's kind of crazy. Um, but the expectations to have them, I doubt anybody comes in with more expectations than he does at North Carolina. Maybe Ronald Curry back in the day, and we know how that turned out. But Drake's expectations were pretty high, and he's exceeded them. And that speaks a lot to not only him and his character, but his family and his upbringing. And it's just been cool to watch. And he's a Charlotte guy, right? So it's the best. Mac always says the best in North Carolina need to stay home and play for North Carolina. He's a prime example of that. But yeah, he is. If Alabama wants you, right? If Alabama takes your commitment, you're a pretty damn good football player. And he's shown that at Carolina in these first, I guess, 5 games, which is ridiculous because it feels like he's been playing forever.
Yeah, and something that stood out to me. You touched on his running ability, kind of what he's able to do there. It kind of reminds me of different players, obviously, but I know they say this about Patrick Mahomes. It's not just what you have to prepare for, what's going to happen, what could happen, but also about what possibly could happen if things break down. And I think that sometimes Kevin Steele, defensive coordinator at Miami, touched on that with when he watches Drake. If they just need 10 yards, he'll get 12 or 6. He picks up 7 or 8. He does enough with his legs. He just has a real control, real poised guy. So look, let's talk about their weapons on offense too. To touch on Josh Downs, what he's able to do. He kind of torched Miami last year, 11 catches, a career high, 96 yards in the score in last year's game. Josh, they've got other guys too. If you could just kind of this whole group, the tight ends and Antoine Green, what he's been able to do so far too, just these guys on offense that Drake has the ability to throw to.
Yeah, last year Carolina wanted Antoine Green to step in and be Diami Brown and be that guy, and he just never really did it. He started to come on at the end of the year, and he was able to make some plays, and then he got hurt in preseason camp. I think he broke a collarbone or something August 6th or whatever it was, and he didn't get to come back until Notre Dame game, and we saw what he did against Notre Dame. He put up 150 yards against Notre Dame, but Josh Downs obviously is the guy. But when he was out, a couple guys stood out. Kobe Paysour stepped up and made some plays. You got J.J. Jones out there. I always want to say DJ Jones, but that's the running back. We'll get to them in a minute. But J.J. made some plays, but you mentioned the tight end room. And this is something that's interesting when you look at Carolina football and Phil Longo's offense. For the first 3 years, the tight end room was not used a lot. Kamari Morales, number 88, is a guy who caught 4 or 5 touchdowns last year. So they threw to him, but rarely did you hear about Carolina's tight ends. This year, they're difference makers, all of them. You got John Copenhagen, who's one that nobody really talks about. He's got 6 catches on the year for 143 yards. That's 24 yards a catch. They're not your traditional tight end catches. And the same goes for Morales. He's averaging your traditional 13 and a half. But Bryson Nesbitt, number 18, is probably the biggest difference maker. He's a tight end, right, with the quotes, but he can split out wide, and he's 6'6", and it's just a terrible matchup for most corners and most safeties in the conference, especially in the Coastal Division. But the thing about it is they've got those 3 guys, and then they've still got Gavin Blackwell. They've still got Downs, like we mentioned, JJ, we mentioned, so whoever you want to cover, if Miami comes out and wants to bracket Josh Downs, they're going to have problems. And I saw Middle Tennessee take advantage of Miami deep. Well, Antoine Green's that guy for Carolina. And so having him back, it is a difference maker and a game changer on one play that Carolina needs. But the cool thing about watching this is Drake may throw it to any of them. You can't say, well, Downs is out here, he's split out right. We've got to watch out for him because J.J. Jones is out left, and you might solo coverage him or single him. And it all starts with the quarterback, but the receivers have done their job. and when they do their job, they get rewarded, and that just sort of builds that confidence level. It's fun to watch.
That's good. That's good. Running game, Tommy. Obviously we touched on what Drake's bringing with the run, what he does, but other guys, obviously the backs and the freshmen there.
Yeah, Omarion Hampton is probably the guy they want to be the man. He hadn't really done it yet. He's a local kid. He grew up just down the road here. So I watched him through middle school and all the way up to high school. I think Omarion is a physical specimen. I mean, he has been that way since he was 14, 15 years old. But the step up in competition, I think, has been the thing that has sort of caught him off guard a little bit. There was a play against Notre Dame where he was going to truck a guy at the goal line, and it didn't work out for him. And you could almost see the look of wow in his eyes. So he's got to learn and understand that. They've got Caleb Hood. They've been riding him. George Pettaway is another freshman that is, your guy that can get out in space and make people look silly. DJ Jones, I mentioned, he's the veteran of the bunch, and he hasn't played a ton. He's probably the best pass protector. So if Carolina's going to get yards on the ground, a couple things have to happen. One, they have to commit to it. And a lot of people have been down on the offensive line. I listened to Ross on your other podcast on InsideTheU with your other host, and the talk was like the offensive line hadn't done their job. I don't necessarily agree with that. Running backs need to make the offense look good. Jason Staples here at Inside Carolina talks about it all the time, and they haven't really done that yet. Yes, they do it on occasion. They've got, Omarion's long run, 58. Drake's got a 42-yarder in there. Caleb Hood's gone 71. Elijah Green's gone 46. So they can get the big runs at any moment, but the consistency, hitting the hole, getting the 3, 4, 5-yard gains when they need it has been the issue. And like I said, I don't think it's all on the offensive line. I think it's youth and innate ability to find the hole and to hit it at the right time and have some patience. They're getting better. They're going to be pretty good. Omarion was ridiculous in high school. I don't see why he can't get that done in college. But right now it's a work in progress. And as long as you have Drake May that can move him with his legs, it sort of makes that running game look a lot better. And you mentioned about the ability, and Kevin Steele talked about it. If it's 3rd and 6 and you give up quarterback 7, man, that's rough. You re-rack the chains, and the defense has to stay out again. So it starts with Drake, but the running game is, if they can play complementary football on the offensive side with all the weapons in the passing game, then this offense is pretty tough to stop.
Certainly going to be interesting. Miami definitely has to play better than they've played. From a Miami standpoint, they've actually played worse each game. That's just kind of where they're at, 4 games in, but they have a bye. They're trying to get some things corrected. I wrote an article on the website there that the start of game will be very interesting. The last 3 games, Miami is averaging just at 7 points the first half. North Carolina is averaging 23 in their first halves, and Miami just has 9 total points in the first quarter in these last 3 games. So a field goal in each game. So they're not scoring touchdowns early. I think if Miami wants to kind of alleviate some of the struggles they've had in these 2-game losing streak, I think Tyler Van Dyke, you're playing at home, you're hoping that the crowd is behind you, but if it just doesn't go well, you might hear boos once again like they did last time. So there's a lot of pressure on Miami, and certainly you don't want to lose 3 straight to start out. Tommy, your time is valuable. I appreciate you definitely bringing the insight here. So I'll let you get going, but definitely looking forward to the game.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure. I wish I was heading down. I will not be down there. Like I said, we were down there for the Orange Bowl a couple of years ago. It's a very cool place to see a game. Should be an exciting one. If anything's true, I would wager it's going to be some sort of shootout if Miami can keep up, because I think Carolina's going to put up points. But we'll see. Somebody's got to stand and put their foot in the ground. We'll see which team can get it done.
All right, Tommy, take care.